All right, in this lesson right here, things are going to start getting interesting. This is level design 2, and what we're going to do is construct the level that you see in our viewport right now. Logan, if you'd like, go ahead and take them on a quick tour. Basically, this thing is made up of 3 different levels. Yeah, this is going to be just a little bit slow because right now we've got a lot of things going on. So there's a lot of glass we're using all the way around. We're using a lot of static meshes. It's an excellent exercise, though, in teaching you guys how to do a bunch of duplication. We're going to look at moving pivot points. We're just going to be looking at a lot of stuff. So we're going to use an elevator in the center to get us up from the bottom, which is, as you can see, kind of surrounded by some liquid down there. We'll have an elevator that's going to take us all the way up to the top. And then once we get to the top, we're able to travel down these platforms to surrounding platforms that go around the arena. And again, there's 3 levels. And we can also go back through these doors here, where from there you can see it cuts down through ramps down to each of the other levels. So it's interesting. It's relatively simple. I think everybody will be able to reproduce it with absolutely no problem. And it's going to be our job to walk through it quickly, step by step, through this VTM. Now, we're actually going to divide it up through a couple of lessons, or a few lessons, actually. This very first lesson, we're going to go in there and we're going to cut in all of our brushes, basically. So we're going to have all of our subtraction brushes and all of our addition brushes, and then from there we'll be going into the next lesson where we'll actually start introducing all of the static meshes. So with that, let's go and get started. Logan, go ahead and give them a new scene.
Okay.
So let's say we want to go ahead and start out. We've got it's basically 3 different levels that make up this arena. So let's go ahead and start out with the main central cylinder. So we're going to do a cylinder, and let's give it a height of 512 by, let's say, 1152 and 768. And there we go. And Logan, go ahead and position that thing. And before you subtract it out, let's just go give it some sort of concrete wall-looking texture, because we'll worry about doing all of our. Yeah, that'll work right there. Yeah, that does a trick well. And we'll worry about actually texturing this thing in a different lesson. So he's just subtracted this out. So now we have a subtraction brush inside our map, and very simple. Now he's just going to move it up. And Logan, if you want to go ahead and explain a little bit about what you're doing and as far as spacing is concerned.
Okay, I actually moved it 32 units above the first subtraction brush. I have my grid set to 16 right now, so I know that 2 grid squares would equal 32 units.
Okay, so now he's just did another subtraction.
And I'll do one final top arena. So 2 more grid units for 32 units. Subtract. And there's the main central arena cylinders.
Of course, right now it's not really so much an arena for the simple fact that it's almost, well, it is 3 rooms that are completely separated from one another. So the next thing, let's go ahead and cut an opening out between all 3 of these guys, so it looks like basically one large area. And so for the connector cylinder, let's do 32 by 768. Yeah, looks good.
Let me bring that down so it's right in between. So it'll basically cut through these 2 larger cylinders, like such.
Very nice. So now we can see down from the top level into the middle level.
Make sure I keep it centered from the top view. And another subtraction. And there. Now we can see through all 3 levels.
And at this point, go ahead and right-click on the center of the top and add a light in, and let's just rebuild our geometry and our lighting real quick. And what this will do is help give our viewers kind of a better look at what the level's actually looking like as far as shadows are falling, et cetera, just for the simple fact that right now with all of this stone in there or concrete in there, it may be kind of hard to actually see what's happening. See now, yeah, you can get a much better feel for what's going on. So it looks like we got these 2 large walkways that we can use to walk around the arena, if you will. Of course, we're going to be chopping those up pretty good coming up here real soon. All right, as a matter of fact, you know what? Let's go ahead and chop them up now.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do our walkway cutouts, and we're going to make a cube that's going to be 32 by 512 by 384. And Logan's going to handle these a little bit special, so I'll let him explain it to you.
Okay, what we're going to do actually is, once we cut these out, is once the map's finished, it's not going to be solid geometry all the way around. It's only going to be corner pieces that are made out of geometry, and then they'll be connected by static meshes. So what I'm going to do here, move this subtraction brush up a little. See, move it in. And once it's lined up, I'll go ahead and subtract that out. And there, you can see I cut that out of that one walkway. If I rebuild the lighting on it, it might be a little bit easier to see. So, there, we've got one, and only 16 left to do.
Now, we're going to make this easy, but we're going to do it in a very unique way. Now, we don't have to continue using this builder brush to subtract out. We can actually copy the subtraction brush and duplicate it all the way around, if you will.
Right. So, for the first duplication, I'm simply going to grab this one brush, and let's see. Because we're going to be dealing with so many of these and needing to reselect them, instead of selecting one, duplicating it, then going back all the way back to the original, duplicating it again 8 times, what I'll actually do is create a group and throw this brush into its own group. So I'll create a new group. Let's call this ring cutout. Then with only that one brush selected, I'll add it to the group. Make sure you select ring cutout. Add the one subtraction brush to ring cutout, and this will become very useful in just a second. So now I've got one brush in a group by itself. So now I need to start duplicating it and moving it all the way around this ring. But before let's see. So I'll go ahead and duplicate this one. Now here's the interesting thing about duplicating something that's inside a group. All the duplicates also belong to the same group. So if I was to hit select all in group, I would get both of them. And this will become very useful for when I need to duplicate after I have 2. I can duplicate those to 4, then duplicate those to 8 really very easily. So let me go back and select just the one I've just duplicated. I'm actually going to move it back over so that it's centered on the original brush. Then I'm going to zoom in to the center of the grid.
Might even be easier if we change the actual grid size.
Yeah, you could see it a little bit easier. If I go and change it all the way up to 128, then I want to be able to rotate this. If I was to right-click, if I was to control-right drag, you'd see I'm rotating it, but that doesn't really put it around the center. It's just rotating basically on its own axis. So if I move it back, of course, moving with 128 is a little bit tricky. So if I was to center it back up, then say place its pivot in the center by going to pivot, place pivot snapped here. So even though I didn't right-click dead on the center, I was close enough to the center grid point that it snapped the pivot to the center grid point. So now with that in place, I can control right drag, and then when that will rotate it and snap it perfectly in place, as though it had just been rotated over.
And of course, right now you're just not seeing the cutout because, again, we have not rebuilt geometry.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that off before I rebuild the geometry.
Yeah, check this out. This is where things get really cool. Now if he selects again the group.
Right. Now instead of having to go back and select this brush again, I can simply say select all in group, automatically grabs both, Control W to duplicate with the view selected, center those brushes back up, and then zoom in a little and say, let's see. Wow, it actually left the pivot there that time. So I can simply control drag those over. And then, now instead of having to control click twice, I can simply still say select all in group, Control W with the view selected to duplicate, center them back up, and then rotate them.
Of course,
around.
we got a little bit of a pivot issue.
Right, so I can just drag them back into place, but still I was a lot closer.
Absolutely.
Now, with all 8 of those in place, I can say build geometry. And
build our lighting too.
And then watch the duplication actually duplicate it up a little for a lot of those brushes.
Ah, we're not keeping an eye over on our side view.
Right. So.
But that's the beauty of this. Watch how easy this is to fix.
So if I just go and grab the brushes that went up a little bit too high. Yeah, that was another thing. I shouldn't have stayed working in the 64 grid unit. If I put it back to 16, it'll be a little bit happier about snapping down. Let me see. Are those? Let's see. That's 32, so might have to go down to 8, and then they'll fit down. So go to the other side, grab the brushes that were too high, and now rebuild geometry. And let's go ahead and throw the lighting in there so we can see what's going on. There. Now I've got just corners sticking out of the edges of the cylinder.
Very cool.
So now that we've got all 8 of those, they're still in that group. So I could bring the group browser back up, say select all in ring cutout, select. Now I have all 8 of them. Then I can go, say, from the top view again, Control W to duplicate them, center them back up a little, and then I can Control drag and place them over the second ring instead of the top. And with those in place, I'll just do a build all, so grab the lighting along with it. And there. Now we have all of our brushes cut out.
That is just so easy.
Okay.
Okay, so the next thing that we're going to go ahead and take a look at doing, let's go ahead and do where we're going to add the water at the bottom.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and do the floor water connector first.
So I'll grab a cylinder.
Okay, and let's say we're going to go with 16 by 768 by 400.
And in this case, since the inner radius will play into this, we need to have more of an actual ring shape than a solid cylinder. I'll set hollow to true, and then build and close. So now we've got the centerpiece won't subtract out of the floor. Let me drag that in, center it up a little on the level, like such. Actually, let me up my grid for just a second here so I can see what I'm doing. Then center that up. And then grab the grid back to 8, because I'll have to, once I try to lower the 16-unit high cylinder perfectly into the floor. So
and the whole idea of this brush that he's about to subtract out right now is it's going to end up giving us a lip to where the actual cavity that's going to hold the water is going to run back up underneath the walkway.
Right. So if I subtract that out now that I've lined it up perfectly to the floor and then centered it in the top view, now you can see where it's starting to cut a groove into the floor.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and expand that a little bit further, and let's do the water pool.
Okay.
So that's going to be a cylinder with 128. It's going to be 1152 and 400.
Now let me drag that down so that it's top.
Underneath that little water connector we just made.
Centered up in the top view and subtract it out.
All right, rebuild all so that we can see that lip really well now. Look at that. That looks very, very nice.
All right, so now we got a central almost pillar starting already.
Okay, so now we have this central center area. Why don't we just go ahead and create those 4 tall pillars, if you will, that we have in the middle that ends up acting as the elevator support braces.
Okay.
All right, so we'll start out with a cube. And we'll do this one with, let's say, 1600 by 32 by 256.
Then I'll move it out so that let me set my grid back to 16 for a second. Now I can move it within 16 units of the outside edge of the pillar we're starting. In the front view, I'll go and move it up so that it's even with the main floor or the floor of this pillar. So with that in place, I'll go ahead and it's lined up on the floor. It should be lined up on the ceiling as well. And we'll go ahead and add one of those.
Little Control-A action there. All right, so now we're going to do a little subtraction away from this and then perhaps a little bit of vertex editing to give us the look that we're looking for. So this one should be 1536 by 32 by 128.
Okay, build that. I'll move that and snap it up to the outer edge of that first addition brush. Make sure it's centered up inside that addition brush, and it is. So then I'll go ahead and subtract that out. So now I kind of have like a backwards bracket looking brush now.
And because of time, I will point out we could have created a construction zone out to the side, and we could have made this in there and intersected the brush and all, but we're only going to do 4 of these, so we're just going to leave the 2 brushes in there together. So now let's do a little bit of vertex editing there, Logan.
Okay. So I'll go and grab that subtraction brush. You saw I moved the builder brush out of the way. And in the front view, I'll zoom up on this corner, on these 2 corner vertices here. I'll go into vertex editing mode, and then I'll do a Control-Alt-Drag over those corner vertices. Zoom in a little more and say move them up about 3 grid units with my grid being set to 16.
Idea is just to give a little bit of interesting look to the architecture here.
And the same to the top. Control-Alt-Left-Drag, grab those 2 vertices, and move them about 3 units down.
All right.
Switch back to my camera mode, and I'll do a rebuild all. And now the pillar just got a lot darker, but you can still see from its silhouette, you can see the shape that was created from that.
Absolutely. So now we want to go ahead and take these and duplicate them around so that we've got 4 that are angled at, let's say, 45-degree angles.
Okay, so I'll take the first one. In order to get it at a 45-degree angle, but at the same positioning, as in the same spacing off of the edge, what I can do is grab both brushes, and then, like before when I had the pivot go to the center, I can do that same thing. I'm not going to create a group for these because there's only going to be 4 of them, and it's fast enough just to go one by one and duplicate them. So I'll right-click in the center, say, snap the pivot. Now with the pivot snapped to the center, I can simply control right drag until it's rotated about 45 degrees out. And with that in place, I can use Control W, duplicate it, move it back over itself, snap the pivot to the center again, and then Control right drag to rotate, Control W again, snap it back over, pivot, snap to the center, and one last duplicate, one last pivot snap, and that should do that. Okay.
Or that last one's still
Not
off
quite.
just a little bit.
There we go.
All right, much better.
Okay, I can...
And a quick rebuild all, just so that we can see what's going on. We probably could have taken the one light and moved it down a little. That's all right. That'll do the trick. Now let's go ahead and make the top just a little bit more interesting. Let's add a cone in there.
Okay.
So that we just... A couple of things. We can give some interesting architecture to the top of the level as well as a nice little hiding spot for Logan.
Alright, so I'll go ahead and grab a cone primitive, bring up its properties. Let's say...
Okay, and for the cone, let's say, 512 by 256 by 768 by 400. And let's hollow this thing out.
All right.
And now let's hunt for it. Man, there it is.
Now again, I want to drag my builder brush, but I have other brushes selected, so I'll simply click on space. Now I have nothing selected. Control left drag will auto-select that builder brush.
Very nice. And again, zooming in to make sure he's lining up properly. Now let me go ahead and point out this is going to cause a little bit of a problem with some of our center snapping for the pivot point a little later, isn't it, Logan?
Yes, if you notice, after I moved the builder brush back off, now we've got like wireframes from that grid, and they all go to the center. And if we wanted to try to snap to the pivot, we'd end up right-clicking on it and selecting it, and then snapping its pivot as well, and all that kind of stuff that we don't want to do.
So we're going to end up hiding this guy.
Right. As a matter of fact, we can go ahead and hide it now because we don't need to get back to it. We never have to move the cone around. So I'll just go ahead and scroll down. The little green bar actually acts as a scroll bar. So let me scroll down so that I have hide selected actors. Simply hide it, and as soon as I update a view, then it's hidden. It still applies. It's still counted in the geometry calculation at rebuild time, but now it's not seen in the viewport, so I have access to my little center point so I can snap pivots to.
Very, very handy. Now, since those 4 structures that we created in the very center is going to act as support for the elevator, I guess we could probably go ahead and make the top ramp connect ring, if you will, which is where the elevator is going to stop. Now, I know, Logan, right now you don't actually know the height that we need to place it at until later on when we bring in the ramp static meshes that we're going to be using. But, you can just go ahead and pick a random height. That sound good?
It should be easy enough to move and rebuild later after it's added.
Absolutely. So let's just do another cylinder. This time, 32 by 256 by 128.
Let's build that. Let's center it up on the level. Let me check the height. Now I'm just going to kind of move it somewhere halfway between the top floor and the ceiling. So I'll just move it down a little. Again, this doesn't have to be exact because I'm going to be lining this up with a static mesh later.
Yeah.
We'll that in place.
Yeah, we'll be.
Add that. And then I guess I could do a build all or just build lighting.
Okay, so now let's go ahead and add the next major part, which is going to be, we've got these 3 outer rings that actually exist kind of outside this inner arena area right there.
Around there.
So, yeah, outer ring as in where he's showing you right now. So let's go ahead and create one of those.
Okay, grab a cylinder with a height of 512, an outer radius of 1600.
Oh, very good.
And an inner radius of, I think, about 1184.
Absolutely.
Build that, and make sure it's centered. Notice that I went over these numbers to make sure that I had 32 units in between there. Keep that in mind because that's when we need to cut through here for a doorway, we'll make a brush that's 32 units thick.
All right.
I'll make sure that that's centered and it's even with the floor, and I'll go ahead and subtract that out. And you see now you can't see out to it because nothing connects, but I can actually just move the camera through the door.
Very nice.
Or through the wall. Okay.
All right, so next you want to do a door connecting to it?
Okay, we can go ahead and cut the hole for the door.
All right, so for that, let's go ahead and do a cube. That's 256 by 244 by that 32 that you were just talking about.
Okay. Move that over, center it up, check the height, move it so that's even with the floor here. Go take a closer look and subtract it out.
Easy, easy, easy. Very good. And, of course, we want that on the other side as well. Each of these different levels are going to have alternating doors. So you're going to have two running across straight. If you look at the top viewport this way, then you'll have two that's going to be turned at a 90-degree angle the other way on the second level.
So here and here, level down, here and here.
Exactly.
Okay, and we're only building one of those now because it's going to be, we're going to use static meshes for door frames, and we'll be needing to duplicate those over, so we're just going to leave that one subtraction brush by itself, so we duplicate it later and don't, redo stuff over. Okay, so with that in place.
Okay, did you want to go ahead and cut out one of the windows now?
That sounds good.
All right, so we'll do another cube, and this time we're going to go with 416 by 864. By 32. And again, we're going to have windows basically everywhere where there's not doors, but Logan's not going to be duplicating those all over the place for the simple fact we're going to be somewhat efficient and wait until later until we start duplicating these when we have our glass involved and a few other elements as well.
Okay. So I'm just going to kind of center this up so there's the same amount of distance. You can count 3 grid units above and below this window we're going to cut out.
Okay.
Just look around here. Check that out and subtract it out.
All right, very nice. So if you want to go ahead and do a quick rebuild and just kind of look around the level, I think this is going to pretty much accomplish what we set out to do for this lesson, which is just go ahead and get kind of the meat of it cut in, if you will. Actually have the structure itself, the inner arena, the 3 outer, well, actually, we're not doing all 3 yet at the moment, are we? We're going to wait and duplicate those all at one time.
Right, because there's going to be more glass pieces that we put in.
Exactly. So, yeah, we're just, again, it's just a bit of efficiency. So, even though we got 3 outer sections planned, right now we've only got the upper level one in place. And we've got everything cut and ready for the static meshes as far as the inner part of the arena for all of the different walkways all the way around. And we've got the structure built in the center for our elevator and a ring for our player to step off when the elevator gets to the top. And let's see, we've got the cone placed up in the top just for some interesting architecture and a place for Logan to hide. And we've got the waterway cut out at the very bottom as well, leaving us a little bit of a lip that wraps around and goes up under. So, again, just for an interesting effect. So that's going to conclude this lesson. And in the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and get into static meshes, and that's when we're really going to start making this thing come to life. So that concludes this one. Thanks.